Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you all so much for joining. I'll give a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds for people to come in. But remember, you can always go back and watch the videos once they have been uploaded, which is right after the broadcast. So you can watch on Facebook, you can watch on YouTube. But as I stated yesterday, the reason why I started doing this was because so many people, every election season, would ask me, who's running? Who should I vote for? How do I find out more about candidates? Because they are making decisions that impact our lives, and people really want to know. And I'm glad that they want to know, and I'm happy to be able to share. My first guest this evening is a personal friend of mine, and I am so glad that she is joining me. Shante Avant, she is running for County Commission District 5. So Shante, tell us what is District 5? I know it's a new district, so tell us what the parameters are.
Sure. Hello, Camila. Thank you so much for hosting this tonight. I think it's really, really important for our voters to be informed. And so I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to share. So, District 5 is the newly formed Cordova District. So, if you're thinking about anything of Cordova proper, whether it's Macon, Dexter, all the way up to like Highway 64, Houston Levee, that is the new Cordova District, which is District 5. And it used to be a part of several different county commissioners. And now, after the redistricting, we now have our own district with representation. And it's great that we have an opportunity to have someone, me, in this race who has experience working in public office so that you have the strongest voice and representation for our newly formed Cordova District.
So, what does a county commissioner do? What's the job of the county commission?
Wow, yeah. So the county commission really determines how all county resources, from your property taxes to anything from how you eat or spend money within the county, how those resources go to public services. So that's everything from our sheriff's department, it's our public health and safety, it's criminal justice, and the thing that's really one that's more near and dear to my heart, it's education. They fund our educational system. So the county really has the largest pool of resources that have to determine how the county is one, it's public works, it's our code enforcement, education, but all these things that when you think about how people live and work, and what creates really vital communities, the county resources really determine that.
So, most people know your name from the school board, of course. You were on the school board, I believe, 2013 until earlier this year.
Yes, for 8 years, I served on the school board. Really, really, really proud of my time there. Really proud of some of the things that I was able to accomplish while being on the school board, from funding early education to building a new school in the West Haven community. Really funding, and one of the things I'm really proud of is really spearheading how MWBEs. I created the disparity study.
And when you say MWBEs, just explain what that is.
Sure, it's the Minority Women Business Enterprise. So all of the folks who benefit from what our public system does, they should also benefit in being able to be a part of that spend. So I increased MWBE spend by 31% during the time that I was there. So we want to make sure that the folks whose children are being educated within this district also have an opportunity to reap the benefits of equitable spend and being able to do business with our district. So that was one of the things I was really, really proud of doing during my time on the school board.
So I read a quote of yours public education is the social justice issue of our time.
It is.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, you think about the inequities that so many of our students have faced. Think about the city of Memphis and the number of students and families who live at or below the poverty line. So, in order for our students to have an equitable or improvement of their own economic mobility, they usually have to have education is the key to doing that. So when you think about how most folks are able to earn a living, it's that they've had some type of education, whether that's credentialing or a skill, but education is how folks have created pathways to be able to live in a more equal and just society. And so part of how we think about sometimes how the least of these have been able to make a living for themselves. It really is through education. And so making sure that we are providing our students with quality education is their pathway out of poverty.
What are some of the things that you hope to accomplish if elected to county commission?
Some of the things that are really, really important to me are one, continuing to equitably fund public education. I think that's a really important both tool for how we see some of the things that are challenges within our community. We know the root of increases in crime, decrease in public safety are folks who don't see a pathway out of poverty. And so making sure that our education system really supports our students so that they're ready and prepared for the workforce or post-secondary opportunities is important to me. It's also important that we, our criminal justice system literally has been overturned in the last few years in the ways that, one, our citizens are treated, ways that they're sentenced, and ways that we can continue to have pathways for them to get back into society. And so having a criminal justice system that is equitable and fair is part of a platform that's really, really important to me. Also, in general, thinking about how we continue to work with law enforcement to really make our community safer is important as well. I do not believe in over-policing our communities, but I do think that there are ways that we have to create even diversion programs for our young people who sometimes may choose a path that isn't the right path for them, but how do we help them get back on the right track? Our youth and community services and the over $2 million+ that funds our community service agencies is important to help and support our community.
How can your constituents, how can the people in the community become more involved in what's going on with government other than voting?
Well, voting is the most important thing.
Right.
They have to make sure that their voice is being heard. But I think it's also that you're involved in different realms, whether it's your neighborhood associations, it's in your kids' public schools, being an active participant in their school and in their education process. It is in get out the vote efforts within your community. It's also in the many ways that we as public servants have to have accountability with our constituents, right? So it's when those town hall meetings are being held, you have to come and actually participate in making sure that the issues that are important to you in your community are being voiced and that you're holding the people who hold those offices accountable for the things that are important. One of the things that has really come up a lot in my conversation with constituents in District 5 is the number of out-of-town investors who are coming and buying rental properties in our community, right? And so those people don't have a vested interest in what Memphis looks like. We do have a vested interest in what Memphis looks like, and home ownership is a really important part of that. But when you have these out of town investors who, one, don't keep up the properties or have no vested interest in really reinvesting in Memphis, I think that is an issue that we have to continue with over 7,000 out of town investors,
Wow.
over 7,000 currently. And right now, the number of renters versus homeowners is 64% to 46%. How do we change the narrative? How do we change opportunities for people to both be stable, economically stable, and be homeowners so they're continuing to build into this community and our tax base for us to have the most vital communities throughout the city of Memphis and the county?
So you have been doing some phenomenal work at the Women's Foundation for Greater Memphis for the past over 10 years, I know.
15 years.
15 years.
Started
So
when I was very, very, very young.
so can you tell us what the Women's Foundation, what's the purpose, and tell us about some of the work that you've been doing there?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. The Women's Foundation, which is my day job, all the other things that I do are really just because I really care about Memphis. But one of the ways that I've worked in nonprofit for the last 26 years, the last 15 years with the Women's Foundation. We're a nonprofit, philanthropic, public agency that raises funds, invests back into communities that serve low-income families. And so we do that through 5 different strategies: case management, youth development, workforce development, financial literacy, and early education. And so each year we invest about $1.2 million into the community through organizations that we fund that are providing those direct services to families. So when you think about a family who is living at or below the poverty line, how do you help them have the resources needed in order to become more economically stable? And that may mean that you're providing, equitable childcare, youth development programs for their children, job training and workforce development for the mom and the dad. And then it is job placement, but it's also thinking about ways that you can support them and their family being the best that they can be at all the things that they want to achieve. One of the things that I often say, if you ask a mom from any socioeconomic background what she wants, it's what's best for her children. And that's really where it starts for us. It starts with early education. It starts with creating equitable educational opportunities for our children within the Memphis and Shelby County system. But then it's also opportunities for them to be the best citizens giving back to Memphis.
Why do you feel that you are the most qualified candidate for this position?
I think I'm the most qualified just because of all of the experiences that I bring to the table, whether it's my 26 years experience as a nonprofit leader, whether it's the 8 years I served in public office, whether it's all the ways I've been involved in the community from Clean Memphis. Environmental education is really important to me, whether it's my role serving as an advisory with the social work department at the University of Memphis. All of these different ways that we think about how we make communities strong are ways that I have been an advocate and worked diligently all of the time that I've been in Memphis. And I'm a native Memphian. Went to University of Tennessee and I came back and I am a Memphian by choice. Okay. I'm deeply vested as a mom of one who's, a rising senior.
Oh,
To
wow.
Yes, yes. Peyton is going to be a senior this year. So all the ways that I think about the skills I bring, it's always to make Memphis and Shelby County stronger. So that makes me the best candidate for this position.
So I wanted to ask you about the cleanup projects and why you decide, what is it and why you decided to start doing that?
Well, I've always, for the last probably 8 to 10 years, have been involved in cleanup efforts and environmental education in the city of Memphis. It's important to me, and as a homeowner in Cordova, that the areas and spaces in which we live reflect how we think about our community. right? And so when people think about where they want to live, they don't want to go anywhere that there's trash and litter. It has to be how, one, our communities are preserved, because they're beautiful communities all throughout the city of Memphis, and particularly I love the one that I live in Cordova. But it is important that, one, we educate our youth about what that means, but also how we continue to have, our property values strong within our community, because that also continues to help our tax base, right? And if we don't have a strong tax base, we don't have the resources needed to continue to make our community strong and vital. So that is just my little small part that I do. Every couple of months, I organize a cleanup. I invite family, I invite HOAs throughout the community of Cordova to come and join us. And people are just like, they're hyped. Like, how do we do this? How do we become involved? Yeah, come do a cleanup on a Saturday morning for 2 hours, and you will not believe the difference it makes in our community.
And early voting starts this Friday, July 15th.
Yes.
Election day is August 4th. Thank you so much. Do you have any closing words?
Yes, I just want to make sure that people know, please check your polling locations. With this redistricting, it's really important that you know where you can vote. And in Cordova, that's Tennessee Shakespeare Center, it's Briarwood, and it's Mount Pisgah. Please check where you can vote. It's important that your voice is heard.
Thank you so much, Shante. The last time I saw you, we were at the New Edition and Jodeci and Charlie Wilson concert.
Having a good time.
Having a blast. Now, when I tell you I was so sore the next day that I had to go home, I had to take a half day. But it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on, Shante. And if I'll post your website if people want to find out more information.
Please
and
do.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Camila. I appreciate you. Thanks to everyone. Make sure your voice is heard in this very, very important election.
Bye. All right. Thank you to Shante, County Commission District 5. My next guest is Cathy Anderson, and I'm going to bring her in. Can you hear us?
I can.
Okay. Can you turn your volume up just a little bit? Okay, my next guest is Cathy Anderson. She is running for General Sessions Criminal Court Division 10. And Cathy, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, I am running for, I am Cathy Anderson, and I am running for Judge of General Sessions Criminal Court Division 10, the Domestic Violence Court.
Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background, your history, and your legal work history?
I sure will. I graduated from high school here at Central High, the high school, in 1984. I went on and graduated from Union University in Jackson, Tennessee, 3 years later in 1987. I sat out a year and worked, and then decided I'd go to law school. And in 1988, I went to the Cecil C. Humphrey School of Law at what's now the University of Memphis on full scholarship, and graduated from there in 1991. I worked in the private sector for 2 years before I actually started to practice law. And I practiced for about a year and a half out on my own. And after having gotten married, and I had a little one on the way, my Jasmine Danielle, I decided I needed a 9-to-5 job and insurance benefits and a steady paycheck. So I approached Mr. A.C. Wharton, who was the then Chief Public Defender, asked him if I could come and work for him. So he gave me an interview, and soon thereafter, in March of 1995, I started my career as an assistant public defender. And
And you are still there.
I am still there.
So,
Love
what kinds of
it.
cases do you handle and have you handled?
I've handled everything from prostitution, disorderly conduct to first degree murder.
So, Division 10 is a specialty court.
Yes, it is.
It's domestic violence. Why have you chosen to run in this particular seat?
Well, domestic violence has always been an issue which is close to my heart. I came from, uh, I was raised in a family that had some domestic violence. And I know firsthand how everybody feels who's associated with a domestic violence case: the abuser, the victim, and any children who may observe. And further, I was the first public defender in Shelby County, the first and only one at first, who defended domestic violence defendants, those who were accused of actually committing domestic violence. And I served in Judge Ann Pugh's courtroom. Now, that was before we had a specialty court for domestic violence. That didn't come for some years later. But when domestic violence first became a crime in the state of Tennessee, I was the only person in our office who represented clients that were charged with domestic violence offenses.
What do you think that judges can do to help prevent domestic violence?
I believe that the burden is, yes, the judges do have a burden to educate the community as to what we need down at 201 Poplar in the criminal justice system. One thing that would be very helpful, in my opinion, is if we had a domestic violence registry. That would serve to identify the convicted abusers, and we would have a database where we could look up people before we engaged in a relationship with them, to determine whether or not they were predisposed to domestic violence. We could look up people who attempt to engage our kids and grandkids in relationships, so that we could keep ourselves safe and not become someone's next victim. It would also serve to ensure that those who are convicted of domestic violence receives the treatment that they so desperately need for behavior modification and conflict resolution. As the system is now, they are put on probation, and if they decide they don't want the treatment, and it is a very vigorous treatment course of 26 classes, which takes about half a year to complete. There are those out there who decide that they don't want to do that. Alcoholism or alcohol use and drug use are also catalysts to domestic violence offenses. And once a person has been triaged and determined that alcoholism did play a part, or drug use, then they must have treatment for those things too. Well, if you're addicted, you may not want that treatment, and you may want to say, okay, well, I'm just going to go to jail and do my sentence, and then I don't have to do this treatment. But if we had a registry which mandated the treatment, and that a person could not get off the registry until they actually got that treatment, then that would be very, very helpful. And we wouldn't be relegated to a mere 1 or 2 years where the person was under the jurisdiction of the courts. Because after that 1 or 2 years on probation, the court has no power to order a person to receive treatment. And we just want strong families. That's what my focus is on: strong families, because strong families make a strong community.
So, with regard to the domestic violence registry, are there places that already have this? Um, where did this idea come from? I know you spoke to me about it some months ago, maybe a year ago, and that was the first time I had heard of it. Of course, I've heard of the sex offender registry and the child abuse registry, but never a domestic violence registry. But as it stands, if somebody is convicted of an offense, that is public record. So if you look up the person's name, if you have, a date of birth or some other kind of identifying information, you could find that they were convicted of the offense. So how would this domestic violence registry be different from just the regular criminal record?
Well, sometimes when you look up someone's record, you may not be able to find certain offenses. Um, if a case is no longer pending, you may not be able to find an offense. If it could have been erased because of some type of diversion or something like that, in those cases, you would not be able to find those offenses. Um, the main thing, however, is that there is a database which would um, which would be able to, where a single person could go and look up however many names with ease so that they wouldn't be discouraged in finding out whether or not someone is predisposed to domestic abuse. And again, also, which is equally as important, if not more so, that person could be required to get that treatment that they need in behavior modification and conflict resolution, to teach them how to actually love. Most people don't know that domestic violence is a cycle of abuse. It goes from generation to generation. And the way that that occurs is when domestic abuse or battering occurs in front of children. And the children will either mimic the behavior of the abuser or the victim by becoming future abusers or victims. And if they don't become one of those, then statistics show that they may be affected by uh, post traumatic stress syndrome. So we want a healthy community, emotionally, mentally, and physically, because domestic violence also affects the psyche, and it definitely can affect us in our latter years once children become adults. So again, my focus is on the family, a healthy family, because a healthy and strong family makes for a healthy and strong community.
Thank
Oh,
you. So, oh,
and that also goes to couple with my mantra for practice of law, which is one goal. I have one goal, one passion, and that's justice. And if I can get justice for those victims out there, being male or female, because women batter too. It's not a thing whereas only men batter, but women batter too. If I can get justice for all of those and get treatment for everybody who's convicted of a domestic offense, then I think that's a win-win situation for both the criminal justice system, not just both, the criminal justice system, the family, and the community as a whole.
so shifting a little bit, 201 Poplar, which is the criminal justice center in Memphis, there's a reputation of things being overall disorganized, and people are afraid to go there for anything. There's a stigma associated with it because of a lot of times it seems that things aren't very efficient. When you go and you have a case, you don't know whether you're going to be there for the whole, afternoon, for hours and hours. One thing I think that we've learned over the past 2 years or since the pandemic is that we can use technology to make things more efficient. So, how would you intend to, as a judge, make the court more efficient?
First of all, I must say that the canons of judicial ethics say that I cannot make any campaign promises as a judicial candidate. However, I do foresee, if I'm elected, definitely attempting to do arraignments and report cases virtually.
And so, explain what you mean by arraignment and report for the people who are not familiar with those terms.
Well, an arraignment is where you actually tell the defendant of a crime, who's accused of a crime, what they're charged with, how much time they're facing. You would find out whether or not they can afford an attorney. If they could not, that one could be appointed for them. And then, after a brief hearing and determining their financial ability, appoint a public defender, or if there's a conflict of interest, appoint a private attorney to represent them, and such would be their bill would be paid for by the state of Tennessee.
So you're saying you could make arraignments and reports, that part more efficient, you hope to.
Exactly. Also, I believe that, okay, so we know, you and I as attorneys, that if we set a case for a preliminary hearing or a trial, that we must report to the court by 10:30 or 11 o'clock, so that by 11 o'clock, the hearings or trials should start. Well, I don't know why everybody has to rush to be down there at 9 o'clock when the hearings don't start until 11 and sometimes later. So why not just schedule that group of people at a particular time to come down there? And it doesn't necessarily have to be at 11 o'clock, but whatever time is agreeable for a hearing or a trial to start. And then that way we don't have as many people in the building, we don't have as many germs, we don't have to worry about the spread of COVID, monkeypox, or any of the other dreaded illnesses that are falling upon us at this juncture.
Well, we are almost out of time. Do you have any closing words?
Yes, I do. I've practiced law with the Shelby County Public Defender's Office for the past 28 years, practicing criminal defense law only. I compile outlines and training materials, and I teach training materials in our office. I also teach and prepare continuing legal education courses for the criminal defense bar. Since COVID has descended upon us, I actually have to produce and host them online now, so that our attorneys can get their required continuing legal education credits. So I am very knowledgeable of the law. I am a very firm and fair person. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And I just believe that everybody who would come into my courtroom once I'm elected should be treated with decency and respect. And I would observe the law and determine each case on a case by case basis according to the evidence that each attorney puts before me.
Well, thank you so much, Cathy. Good luck. And
Thank you.
people can find you. Your website is CathyAnderson.com.
ElectCathyAnderson.com is my website. Elect Cathy Anderson Now on Facebook. And you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you so much, Cathy. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Camila.
Oh, okay. Thank you to Cathy. My next guest is attorney Terita Hewlett, and she is running for General Sessions Criminal Court, Division 11. And I'm going to add her right now. Are you there?
Yes, can you see and hear me?
Yes, can see and hear you well with your great view of 201 Poplar right there in the background. I can see it.
I'm here in my office. I walk to court every day. Yes.
Yes. So, can you introduce yourself to the listeners and explain the position that you're running for?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Terita Hewlett. I have been a licensed attorney since 2001, started my own firm in 2009, and I practiced law in every court in Shelby County: criminal, civil, chancery, circuit, probate court. I've also practiced law on the outskirts, including Bartlett, Germantown, Collierville, Millington, you name it. I've been in court every day since I started my own firm in 2009. I enjoy mentoring, giving back to the community, and I am running for Judge, General Sessions Criminal Division 11.
What kinds of cases have you handled and do you handle now?
Okay. Specifically in the criminal environment, I've handled all types of cases. I've handled anything from a simple theft, an assault, marijuana charge, all the way up to a first degree murder case, aggravated robbery, carjacking. I've also represented not only adult offenders, but juvenile alleged delinquent offenders as well.
So, what do you think are some of the major challenges facing the judicial system, the criminal justice system?
Well, I think it's very important that the person that holds the position of a judge understands the importance of the presumption of innocence. And we often hear that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. I believe that everyone is innocent unless they're proven guilty. I think of the perception of the courts in the criminal courts in some parts of Shelby County is that people are prejudged when they come into the courtroom, and maybe they feel like they don't get a fair opportunity to be heard. I believe a good judge will allow both sides to be heard equally and fairly and will not rush the process. So the biggest challenge, I think, is making sure that both sides are heard, that the playing field is leveled when it comes to the criminal litigation process.
Tell us more about your mentorship. I know you've done a lot of mentorship throughout your career, throughout your legal career, and you had some other careers before you were a lawyer. So tell us more about mentorship and why it's important.
I think it's important because I am a first generation attorney. And the first person that in the legal environment that actually mentored me was a man by the name of Samuel Lee Perkins, who has since passed. But I needed an environment where someone could tell me, hey, this is where you stand, introduce me to the court personnel, the judges, the clerks, in a non-threatening environment. And I appreciated that, and I want to pay it forward. So every year, every summer, typically every semester, I try to mentor students. I also teach as an adjunct professor at Southwest Community College. I teach paralegal students, and they're required to serve a certain amount of hours as part of their course curriculum. So I take in paralegal students, show them what it is to be a paralegal. I also mentor law students. I try to pull from the University of Memphis law students and give them a summer internship when I can. Also, the Memphis Bar Association, getting interns from there when I had the opportunity, because I was that person. I understand, and I want people to be able to learn, to not feel threatened by asking questions, because sometimes you just don't know. So I also serve on the board of Shelby PALS, the Police Action League, which actually mentors at-risk youth. Again, it's a community effort. And I think we all have an obligation that once we are in a certain position where we can give back, that we do take the opportunity to do so.
So, as I mentioned, you were in a couple of different fields before you chose law, telecommunications, real estate. Why did you choose law?
I had always wanted to be an attorney since we did a mock trial when I was in 8th grade. I think law was a great um, meshing of, I believe, my core competencies. By that, I like to defend people. I like to mentor people. I like to argue my point. I like to take a position and stand firm on it. But I've also served as prosecutor for the city of Memphis, and when I'm in that function, I enjoy making sure that the city has met their burden of proof. So it's more of, I've always been driven towards meeting the ultimate goal. And as an attorney, people don't come to you unless they have a problem or they have an issue. And so issue identification and the ability to help them with their needs, not just in the criminal environment, but in civil. I've done divorces, family law, car accidents. The opportunity to help others is what motivated me ultimately to land in the law arena.
And what made you want to run for judge after having practiced law and having a successful legal career? Why then did you decide to run for judge?
Having such a vast experience, and like I said, I think there are 40 judicial positions. I believe I've been in all courts and in front of all judges. So not only do I know how to practice law, but I've had several experiences interacting with judges that helped me to develop the type of judge that I would like to be. So the next step for me is to actually give back, to be fair and impartial, to be able to listen to both sides, and to make decisions according to the facts and the law. I believe this is the next step in me being able to give back and to serve the Memphis Shelby County community.
And what do you hope to accomplish if you're elected as judge?
Well, I hope to satisfy the need in the judicial system, that a judge that will be fair, that will hear both sides efficiently and not rush the process. I understand that everyone has a voice, and to make sure that from arraignment all the way through bench trial, if that person so chooses to have a bench trial, that the process is not only fair, but also as efficient as possible.
Well, we are just about out of time. Would you like to make closing words?
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to say to you, and I meant to say this in the beginning, thank you for the opportunity to share my platform. Thank you for educating voters, helping them to understand about the candidates and what we stand for. I am Terita Hewlett. I am running for Judge, General Sessions Criminal Division 11. I believe that everyone has a voice, and when you put your hands on the courtroom door, you shouldn't be concerned or worried about, will the judge be fair? A vote for Terita Hewlett is a vote for honesty, integrity, and fairness. And I hope you all will join me at the polls. Early voting is this Friday, July 15th through July 30th. Election day is August 4th. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. Please exercise your right to vote. So many have sacrificed for your right to vote. Don't let it go in vain. Thank you again.
Thank you, Terita. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night. All right. Thank you, Terita Hewlett, General Sessions Criminal Court Division 11. My next and final guest of the night is Ross Sampson, and I'm going to bring him in.
Hey.
Hey, Ross, how are you?
I'm good. I'm out here. I'm bloody, but I'm bowed. I'm, of course, I'm in the middle of a campaign. So
yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me. Ross was supposed to be here last night. He was on the campaign trail and got caught up. So I'm glad that you could join tonight. I feel like I know so much about you, and I want you to be able to share with our listening audience. But let's start by talking about your educational background.
Okay. Well, I guess before I went to school, of course, I went to the military. Enlisted as E1. I enlisted in the military straight out of high school. Did early enlistment when I was 17. Got out of the military, and basically I picked the cheapest school in the country that had two things: on-campus housing and a meal card. And that was MTSU at the time. So I went to MTSU.
Middle Tennessee State in Murfreesboro.
Middle Tennessee State in Murfreesboro.
Mhm.
Matriculated through there. Then, after certain things occurred, I came to Memphis. And I remember coming to Memphis on May 28th, 1997. And I've been here ever since. So got to Memphis, of course, went to University of Memphis School of Law, got out in 2001, hung my own shingle immediately after getting out of law school, because my plan initially was to become a lobbyist. But a funny thing happened, you know how those things happen in life. The firm that I was going to folded. So I had to make a decision, and I immediately basically hung my own shingle, started my private practice, and did that for 15 years. Became a federal public defender, and now I presently serve as a assistant Shelby County public defender. I was appointed in March 1st of 2019. Excuse me.
So what kinds of cases have you handled throughout your legal career?
I've handled everything from misdemeanor, indecent exposure, traffic tickets, all the way up to capital murder in both state.
Capital murder, you mean death
First
penalty?
degree murder. Yes, death penalty. Of course, you know, regular murders where they're not seeking death. Capital murders where the state or the United States is seeking death. And I've defended individuals that were facing a death penalty in both state and federal court. And I can say proudly that as, I guess, 12 years of defending death penalty cases, I can proudly say that I don't have anyone on the rolls, if you will.
That's
so
wonderful.
it's been a viable career. It's been a rewarding career.
So through the years of knowing you, and we went to law school together, I think you were maybe one class ahead of me.
Yeah, I was one year in front of you, if I remember.
Yes. But throughout the years, I'll learn things about you, and they will be shocking. And I'll say, I never knew that.
Right.
Not recently, you were talking to a group of people, and you said, "Yeah, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I got shot right here." And I was like, "Wait a minute, I never knew you got shot."
Let's just
you
say,
grew up in Flint, Michigan.
Yes.
And it seems like your life could have very easily gone down a different road, a different path. Can you talk about how that how it didn't and what your influences were?
Well, I originally was raised by my grandparents from birth till I was about 10 years old. I was raised by my grandparents, and that was, it was idyllic almost. Middle class, went to church every Sunday, went to Bible school every Wednesday, did the sleepovers with church and things like that. Very stable environment. Then I moved with my parents when I was 10 years old, and that was, let's just say my parents were trying to figure out how to be parental, and sometimes they didn't do a very good job of it. There were, I guess, episodes of violence. There were instances where the parents were absent from the house, so I had to grow up very quickly. I found myself at 10, 11 years old, changing diapers for my baby brother, who was a newborn when I was 11, babysitting a lot for my siblings. And also when I got out of the military, which kind of segues into the background, when I got out of the military, I found myself having to get custody of my younger siblings, when I was an undergrad. So I ended up putting my brother in 8th grade. I think it was in 8th or 7th grade or something like that. And little sister, she either had to finish high school or she was 17, 18 years old herself. So basically my background, I had to grow up a lot faster than most. And just like any other teenager, you do silly things. I think I had broken someone's window or did something to someone's car. That's where the shot happened, if you will. So you grow up and you have to mature fast while you're a not mature person. I've always been told that I have an old soul, if you will, and I didn't. I guess I'm not self-made by any means. I had a lot of help along the way, but my background does not typically fit what people think of as a lawyer, and I consider myself an everyman. My theme for my candidacy is the people's judge, because I consider myself just a regular person that just so happened to get lucky, have some people around me that believed in me and pushed me. And I could go through a litany of persons from the time in the military to Dr. Thaddeus Smith at Middle Tennessee, professors, Sue Ann McClellan over at the University of Memphis Law School, and so many others that I don't have time to name. But it's just been sometimes there was an old term where they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I had a village and then some when I was coming up. And of course, I had the everlasting prayers of my grandmother that I think guided me through all these years. So it's been a bumpy road, but the reward has been great.
So why did you decide after all of these years of practicing law to run for judge?
Well, after trying hundreds of jury trials, probably 75 of which made it to verdict, trying cases in federal court, including death penalty cases there also. I'm the only candidate that has not only tried death penalty cases in state and federal court, but I've also handled massive tort actions, which involve multiple fatalities. So I've handled things across the board, from probate to civil court, criminal court and state court, federal criminal court. I have a wide, vast experience base, if you will. My decision to run for judge was, just got to be honest, it wasn't something that was always a lifelong goal. Because all you have to do to run for judge, you just have to be, I believe there's an age requirement, and you just have to have a law degree. Well, I decided to do it the hard way, which is learn my trade, if you will. Just going through the repetitive fashion of going through trials over and over and seeing the different things that happen in the trial. And when this year came up and the Honorable Judge Campbell was appointed to the Court of Appeals, after talking to several sitting judges, several mentors, if you will, in private practice and in public practice, I became convinced that I would be a good candidate, an honorable candidate for the bench. And that was basically my process.
So explain how cases come to your court. How do cases end up in your courtroom? What's the process?
Okay, well, cases start out, of course, with a fresh complaint from an individual or a business. And usually those cases start in what are called general sessions courts. Those are the lower courts that handle everything from, well, they basically handle misdemeanors, and one division down in Shelby County anyway deals with felony offenses. And most times those felony offenses get pushed up to the grand jury. Now, if a case is not settled when it's in the lower courts, then it's eligible to be reviewed by the higher courts, which are, the criminal courts of Shelby County. Usually the prosecutor sends a case through grand jury where they present what their probable cause is. After it's gotten through general sessions, the grand jury comes back with either a no true bill, which means there's no indictment, or there's a true bill, and that true bill creates an indictment. And that person is indicted, they go to arraignment, and then their case starts de novo, or brand new, in general sessions court.
In criminal
That's
court.
when the case would get to the court that I'm seeking.
Okay. And recently, or over the course of the last couple of years, there's been an influx of wrongful convictions that we're finding out about, because they've been happening. But people who are getting out of jail after serving 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years in prison. What role can judges play in helping to prevent wrongful convictions?
Well, the role judges play is their role should be to get it right the first time. A judge, while he's not really involved in how each side presents his case, some people call him an umpire, but a state court judge has to also realize or recognize when the rules are being broken, when evidence is maybe not necessarily evidence is being withheld, because he wouldn't know what's in the files of either party that's before him, because that wouldn't be fair. But just enforce the evidentiary rules and make sure that certain evidence doesn't come in, certain evidence that is necessary, and the correct evidence that is necessary does come in order to avoid those tragic outcomes where people spend the bulk of the good part of their lives in jail for something that they did not do. So in a nutshell, it's a judge's duty to have the experience, the know-how, the knowledge to make sure that people that come before them get a fair day in court, where they can present their case without having, I guess, somebody from the bench putting a thumb on the scales of justice, if you will. And that's how I would go about making sure that or trying my best to make sure there are no possibilities that anyone will get wrongfully convicted in my courtroom.
And why should people vote for you, finally? Why should they vote for you for judge?
Well, you should vote for me because, one, I'm the only person in this race that has defended a capital case and earned a not guilty verdict while a person was facing death. I'm the only candidate in this race that has defended people of Shelby County and Memphis in both state and federal court to the highest level, which is a capital offense. I'm the only candidate in this race that is an honorably discharged Navy veteran that has served this country and continues to serve presently as a Shelby County public defender and previously as a defender the Western District of Tennessee. And also I served the people of Memphis during my 15-year career in private practice. I have the know-how, the knowledge, the compassion to continue to serve the people of Memphis and Shelby County, and I intend to do so to the best of my ability. That's the reason people should vote for Ross Sampson, Criminal Court Division 6.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ross. And thank you to everyone who is listening. Please share the video on Facebook, on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'll be back tomorrow.
One other thing.
Okay.
If you need more information about this candidate for Criminal Court Division 6, go to Sampson4judge.com. That's Sampson4 judge.com. And I appreciate your time, Ms. Turner.
You're welcome. Good night, everybody. Be safe.
Later.